Have you ever wondered why you feel so alone, even when surrounded by people? It's a question that's likely crossed your mind at some point, and it's not as uncommon as you might think. Many of us carry wounds from past traumatic experiences that can manifest as feelings of loneliness. This is a complex, nuanced topic that delves into the realm of psychology, where past traumas can lead to a sense of isolation, even when we're in the company of others. It's a strange dichotomy, isn't it? Being surrounded by friends, family, even crowds, yet feeling utterly alone. This sense of isolation is not about physical presence or absence. It's about an internal emotional disconnect that's often linked to past traumatic experiences. It's about the walls we unknowingly build around ourselves. In this video, we explore 6 signs that your past trauma might be causing your feelings of loneliness. The first sign is an increased tendency to withdraw from social situations. Trauma, as you may know, can leave deep, unseen scars that affect how we interact with the world around us. One of the ways this manifests is through a heightened sense of fear or discomfort in social situations. Think of it as a kind of protective shell, a defense mechanism, if you will. You see, our minds, in their own unique way, try to safeguard us from potential triggers that might reopen those wounds. This can lead to us isolating ourselves even from those we hold dear. It's not about being antisocial or unfriendly. It's about trying to navigate a world that suddenly feels fraught with emotional landmines. Now, it's important to remember that everyone's experience with trauma is different. Some people might withdraw completely, preferring the safety and predictability of solitude. Others might still engage socially, but in a more limited or controlled way. Sometimes this withdrawal might not even be noticeable to the individual themselves. It might be subtle changes in behavior, like declining invitations more often or avoiding certain topics of conversation. But over time, these small shifts can add up, creating a growing sense of loneliness and isolation. So take a moment to reflect. Have you noticed a change in your social habits? Are you finding yourself more often than not choosing solitude over companionship? If you find yourself avoiding social situations, your trauma might be playing a role. The second sign is difficulty in forming meaningful connections with others. This sign is not always as noticeable as it may sound. It's not about being antisocial or reclusive. It's about the struggle that comes when trying to establish a deep emotional bond with another person. Trauma has a way of impacting our ability to trust. It can create barriers, walls that are difficult to scale, making it challenging to let others in. This struggle to trust can be so profound that it permeates every interaction, every potential relationship, casting a long shadow over our ability to connect. What does this look like in everyday life? It may be that you find it hard to share your thoughts and feelings with others. You might have a tendency to keep conversations surface level, avoiding any topics that might delve into deeper emotional territory. You may find yourself shying away from potential friendships or even romantic relationships out of fear of being vulnerable, of being hurt again. This difficulty in forming connections can lead to feelings of profound loneliness. Even if you're surrounded by people, you might feel isolated, like you're on the outside looking in. You might long for deeper relationships, for a sense of belonging, but the fear of opening up, of trusting, holds you back. Struggling to connect with others is another potential sign of trauma-induced loneliness. It's a struggle that's not always visible to the outside world, but it's a struggle that's deeply felt by those experiencing it. The third sign is a persistent feeling of being misunderstood. When trauma becomes a part of your life, it's not uncommon to feel like no one truly gets you. This sense of being misunderstood is more than just frustrating. It is deeply isolating. It can feel as though there's a chasm between you and the rest of the world, a gap that's impossible to bridge. You might find yourself thinking that no one can possibly understand what you're going through, that your experiences are so unique and so painful that they are beyond comprehension. This belief can create a sense of loneliness that's both profound and pervasive. It's as if you're speaking a language that no one else can understand, and that can be incredibly isolating. If you often feel misunderstood, it might be a sign that your trauma is causing you to feel lonely. The fourth sign is emotional numbness. Trauma, be it physical or emotional, can often lead to a state of emotional numbness. It's as if someone has turned off the switch to your emotional responses, leaving you feeling empty, disconnected, and alone. This numbness isn't a sign of weakness, rather it's a defense mechanism, a protective shield your mind puts up to guard against further emotional pain. Imagine having a deep wound. Your body's natural reaction would be to form a protective layer over it, right? Emotional numbness works in a similar way. It's your mind's attempt to protect you from pain that feels too overwhelming to deal with. But this emotional numbness can also lead to feelings of isolation and loneliness. It's like being trapped in a shell, disconnected from the world, and even from yourself. You might find it hard to feel joy, sadness, or even anger. It's as though you're watching life pass by from the sidelines, unable to fully participate in it. However, it's important to remember that this numbness is not a permanent state. With the right support and tools, you can begin to reconnect with your emotions, to feel again, to live again. Emotional numbness is another sign that your past trauma might be contributing to your loneliness. But remember, recognizing these signs is the first step towards healing, towards breaking free from the chains of trauma and reclaiming your life. The fifth sign is a fear of intimacy. This is not simply about being afraid of physical closeness, but it also encompasses emotional intimacy. This fear is often rooted in trauma, acting as a defense mechanism to protect oneself from potential emotional harm. It's like building a wall around your heart, making it difficult for others to get close and for you to reach out. When trauma is involved, the fear of intimacy can be intense. It's like the mind is saying, if I let someone get too close, they'll see my scars. They might not understand, they might judge, they might leave. This thought process can lead to avoidance of deep connections, keeping relationships at a safe surface level. However, it's these deep connections that truly nourish us, make us feel seen, understood, and less alone. When we avoid them out of fear, we inadvertently create a self-imposed isolation, bolstering feelings of loneliness. Remember, it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to have scars. Everyone does. It's part of being human. But don't let fear keep you from the connections that can bring joy, understanding, and companionship. Acknowledge this fear, understand where it's coming from, and consider seeking help if it's preventing you from forming the relationships you desire. If you fear intimacy, it might be a sign that your trauma is causing you to feel lonely. It's not an easy journey, but acknowledging it is the first step towards healing. The sixth and final sign is negative self-perception. When we experience trauma, it can skew the lens through which we see ourselves. This distortion can lead us to believe that we are unworthy of love and companionship. Like a self-fulfilling prophecy, we might start to isolate ourselves, convinced that we are undeserving of the connections that make life vibrant and meaningful. This negative self-perception is not a reflection of reality, but rather a byproduct of the trauma we've endured. It's essential to remember that our worth is not determined by the hardships we've faced, but by our innate human dignity. Trauma can make us feel like we're alone in a room full of people, but it's important to remember that it's the trauma speaking, not us. By recognizing this sign and seeking help, we can begin to challenge these negative perceptions and foster a healthy self-image. Negative self-perception is another sign that your trauma might be contributing to your loneliness. To recap, the 6 signs of trauma-induced loneliness we discussed are withdrawal from social situations, difficulty connecting with others, feelings of being misunderstood, emotional numbness, fear of intimacy, and negative self-perception. When trauma takes the driver's seat, it can steer us down a road of isolation and disconnection. Withdrawal from social situations can be a sign that trauma is at play. Likewise, difficulty connecting with others and feelings of being misunderstood can stem from past traumas. Emotional numbness, another sign, often acts as a coping mechanism to avoid dealing with painful emotions. Fear of intimacy can arise from the fear of being hurt again, while a negative self-perception can make us feel unworthy of love and connection. It's important to remember that these signs are not definitive proof of trauma, but they can be indicators. If you identify with these signs, it's crucial to seek professional help. Remember, recognizing these signs is the first step towards healing. You are not alone and help is available.